Good morning. At the same moment one problem has become solved and one risk has become mitigated, another risk opens up and more problems lay ahead by promising action to activists. Action tables promise to be more action-oriented with increased collaboration, wider scope, and more flexibility. Next slide, please. Action tables are described as community-based and supported through the region in collaboration with the city of St. Catharines. Okay, so how have things been going in St. Catharines? Next slide, please. CBC headlines: St. Catharines Anti-Racism Committee wants Jeff Dunham comedy show cancelled. In these stories, CBC News quotes Saleh Waziruddin, who was chair of the committee. He made a variety of defamatory statements about Jeff Dunham in an effort to interfere in the income of the entertainer and the business of the Performing Arts Centre. Thankfully, Mayor Senzik spoke in favor of artistic license, and council voted against the recommendation. Next slide, please. Then what happened? September 14th, CBC headline: St. Catharines Anti-Racism Committee members resign after lack of support from council. The city declining to cancel the comedy show was cited as the breaking point. Next slide, please. Headline: It was like they didn't respect our lived experience, said Simon Rinn, who was quoted in the media and is pictured here. Niagara This Week reported St. Catharines Advisory Committee members want action. Yes, they are activists, and activists want action. The region's action tables will collaborate with St. Catharines, and St. Catharines advisory committees ended in disarray. Notably, the final straw was the city not interfering with freedom of expression. The committee made an impossible recommendation by asking the entertainment venue to break its contract for a nearly sold-out performance. Next slide, please. So who are these activists? The committee advisor who delegated in St. Catharines to cancel the comedy show was communist Saleh Waziruddin. In an interaction last year regarding the region's proposed bylaw amendments, I told Waziruddin that despite our differences, I would defend his right to delegate. He told me, I would not defend yours. I'm a communist, not a liberal. In 2019, Waziruddin delegated in favor of joining the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, which led to the action plan and the creation of the advisory committee. Next slide, please. Rinn and Waziruddin each ran for provincial office in the Communist Party. Voters did not support their views nor their candidacy, yet municipal committees have served to platform their demands upon the public. Next slide, please. Simon Rinn adorns their Twitter account with communist imagery, including Vladimir Lenin and a hammer and sickle. Rinn describes Canada as a fascist state and themselves as a queer revolutionist. Next slide, please. In 2021, then chair of the LGBTQ Advisory Committee, Liam Coward stood with then Mayor Walter Senzik to unveil the St. Catharines Pride Crosswalk. Coward said that the crosswalk was a go-forward promise that the city will be aware of our needs and the broader needs of the community as a whole. A few months later, Coward would author an article in a magazine whose motto is Socialist Ideas in Action. The article was titled Queer Liberation as Anti-Capitalism. It begins, there can be no true liberation from cis-hetero-patriarchal oppression or other forms of oppression without the elimination of capitalism. Next slide, please. Queer liberation, not rainbow capitalism. That means painting a rainbow on the road was never good enough. Coward describes his article as the ethos we need for our pursuit of liberation, which includes that we should, quote, learn from Marxist feminism and adopt Marxist principles into queer theory. This is the advocate who stood with the mayor to inaugurate the Pride Crosswalk, and only a few months later, he said the quiet part of intersectionality out loud in the form of revolutionary neo-Marxist thought. Quote, we should reject corporations and cops, support anti-capitalism and abolition, and build movements that combine black liberation, women's liberation, and queer liberation, and like Marsha P. Johnson, be prepared to throw bricks when the time comes. Next slide, please. 1 year later, Coward authored his resignation letter. In it, he wrote, in hindsight, the installation of the crosswalk was an incredibly easy and uncontroversial project. The real test of the city's allyship is how they respond when what's being recommended is not easy. No, activists want action. The Rainbow Road was the easy part. They want action that would be truly much more revolutionary than merely canceling a comedy show. Similar but different fiascos are coming for the region in coming years as it writes a check it can't cash in the form of promising action to activists. I'll now pause for a moment to acknowledge the tragic passing of Liam Coward, who died on December 31st, 2022. Next slide, please. Niagara Region's DEI Advisory Committee's first public member chair, Emily Spanton, was removed from the committee in December 2021 after a tweet she says was misconstrued. Spanton claims she's engaging in legal action against the region, demonstrating the liability associated with this committee. Edgy statements from activists is a recurring theme and a recurring risk to the region. Next slide, please. These examples are too numerous to quote from, but what we see from advocates on municipal committees is a clear and strong and recurring political bias. In this case, Spanton is using her title as chair as if it were a credential to make political declarations, including during a federal election about a federal party. Next slide, please. On June 23rd of 2022, the same day that DEI Chair Sabrina Hill celebrated the new Pride Crosswalk with Chair Bradley and others, Hill was writing anti-conservative partisan statements. When challenged on these statements, Hill put her account into private and said it was mission accomplished to piss off a goblin army, demonstrating a revelry in polarization, not to mention the name-calling and defamations that continued the entire summer and fall and are far too numerous to be included here. Next slide, please. In July, Hill created a controversy involving a phone call to Niagara Falls councillor Wayne Thompson, which she recorded without his knowledge. Quote, "Hi, my name is Sabrina Hill. I'm chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee for Niagara Region. How are you doing today? I'm not calling in my official capacity at the region. I'm calling with regards to a recent agenda item I had placed on the agenda regarding renaming Marineland Parkway." This example shows again that status on the committee has been used as if it were the shiny badge of a sheriff's deputy, used as clout for an activist to engage in their own activism. Therein has been a problem with the committee, and by extension is a risk by the establishment of action tables. Next slide, please. The goal and purpose of the committee includes providing a safe place for all people to voice their opinions. If only that had remained true, members of the committee targeted members of the community, myself included, with defamations and insults for voicing an opinion. Instead of fostering understanding and inclusion, what has been fostered has been bullying and polarization. Next slide, please. The new terms of reference says that committee members are responsible for being a positive representative of Niagara Region and must adhere to the Code of Conduct of Niagara Region committees. These are welcome changes that serve as an implicit admission that there were some issues, but I believe that there must be further clarity on the functional purpose of public committee members, specifically that they are advisors and not ambassadors, and that no endorsement by the region is implied by membership on the committee. The word representatives may be misleading, as it implies special status has been granted to advisors by virtue of the role on the committee. It must be clear that while the region is open to and interested in their views, it's not deputizing them to engage in activism on the region's behalf unless explicitly authorized. Next slide, please. The new committee structure puts an elected councillor in the seat of chair and a public member in the seat of vice chair. This is another welcome change that may partially resolve some issues from recurring. What remains as an opportunity for improvement is that the committee chair must be made responsible for the conduct of committee members. Public members can lash out and have lashed out in ways the elected members wish they could, but cannot due to their obligations. New rules such as the Public Member Code of Conduct are clearly attempting to provide greater oversight, but public members can come and go, and my suggestion is that if there is an issue with public members' behavior, the committee chair must be able to demonstrate that they took steps to curtail it, or they will be seen as complicit with it. We cannot have it that professional staff and elected representatives must play it clean, while the public members are given a municipal safe harbor and platform from which they play it dirty. Next slide, please. Intersectionality is not defined in the terms of reference and should be. A definition is provided in the action plan. However, this definition is somewhat sanitized by using the word discrimination instead of what is really meant, oppression. Intersectionality originates with critical race theory, encompasses queer theory, which together or separately are often referred to as woke. Next slide, please. The selectees of the committee are not merely any random francophone, indigenous, elderly, racialized, or LGBTQ2S+ individual. They are intersectionalists. They view the world and approach issues from a perspective that relies on certain ideological presuppositions, a so-called intersectional approach. If they don't, they soon will, as the mandate of the committee is, quote, an intersectionality lens. The committee and action table activists are or will become intersectionalists, ultimately neo-Marxists, collaborating under the institutional legitimacy of the regional municipality and towards the objectives of their political projects. Next slide, please. The Advisory Committee and Establishment of Action Tables offers activists the legitimacy and support of municipal institution to engage in the praxis of their political ideology, intersectionality. In doing so, the region fails to maintain its institutional neutrality by allowing itself to be captured by one side, to have its resources and credibility expended against the other. As I've demonstrated, this creates a pattern of behavior that results in polarization. Whether intended or unintended, negative outcomes must be mitigated by the committee. Next slide, please. Chair, in light of the information I've brought forward, I have prepared the following recommendations as a starting point for the committee to make amendments to the terms of reference of the DEI Advisory Committee and the Establishment of Action Tables. I thank you for the time and attention, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.